Hey there, Peter from Universal Dork back again today here to talk about another amazing 80s movie that you probably have never seen before. I couldn't think of a better time to bring this particular film up, having just seen that Ghostbusters Frozen Empire was released last week, a sequel featuring the original cast co-starring that I still haven't seen. And that's sort of amazing to me that you could release a Ghostbusters film with the original cast members and I didn't rush to the theater to see it. I feel like that's sort of where we're at with modern Hollywood movies today, the excitement level. In fact, years ago, I made a blog post where I was asking Hollywood, please stop remaking these movies, classic movies from the 80s, and start giving them bona fide real sequels. Well, I got my wish, and they've been sequeling the fuck out of everything. And unfortunately, I'm not impressed. So, I think today is a good time to talk about an 80s movie, something that doesn't have nearly enough attention. I mean, they should be making a sequel to this. I'm glad they're not. Enemy Territory is an amazing movie, and the connection to Ghostbusters is it stars Ray Parker Jr., who are you going to call? The artist behind the classic theme song to Ghostbusters. He is the star of this movie. And I don't even know if this movie has ever gotten an actual DVD release. It might have overseas or something, but as far as I know, it only exists on VHS. So this is a really great film to check out. If you're a collector of VHS and you don't own Enemy Territory, I highly recommend you get this thing. Check that out. Beautiful. Look at the back. It's got Ray Parker Jr. Punching out Tony Todd. The cast here is amazing. So Enemy Territory also stars Jan Michael Vincent in a pretty over-the-top role that you sort of have to see to believe. But I can say that the first time that I saw this movie was on VHS. I had no idea that it even existed, and I had a sort of a bit of a feeling that I was in for something somewhat special when I saw that the film was produced by Charles Band from Full Moon Features and Empire. He put out some really great stuff, directed some great stuff. Obviously, there's some cool Full Moon stuff. And it was also directed by Peter Manoogian, who did some of my favorite 80s movies. He did a segment in one of the all-time greats, cult classic, The Dungeon Master, which is just an incredible horror anthology fantasy. If you haven't seen that one, you got to check The Dungeon Master out. He also did a movie called Arena from 1989, which is super awesome too. This sort of space gladiator, monsters fighting. That's a really cool movie. But he also did another of my all-time favorite movies that I saw first as a kid, The Eliminators, which is absolutely a number one pick for me as far as influential 80s movies that molded my specific cinematic preferences. So those movies are all great. Peter Manoogian also directs Enemy Territory. So right there I knew we're on to something special. And also seeing the cast with Ray Parker Jr., who you're going to call Ghostbusters, in the lead role. And this other guy, this Gary Frank guy, no idea who he was. We've got Tony Todd. I mean, Candyman, Night of the Living Dead remake. I mean, he's been in so many cool things. He's got a great role in this movie as well. So this is sort of an urban thriller. And the basic premise is this insurance salesman, Gary Frank, has to go into a dangerous part of the inner city. He has one client that he has to visit on a Friday night. He agrees to go do it. He goes all the way to the top of this apartment complex. And the second that he gets there, he notices right away that he feels danger all around him, specifically because he's a wimpy white guy wandering around in a dangerous part of town, but also because he notices that there's a strong gang presence in the area. And this gang that sort of has a stranglehold on this apartment complex is called the Vampires. And they are led by Tony Todd as the leader of this gang, and he is absolutely, hands down, amazing in the role. I mean, I never see this movie referenced anywhere or really given praise anywhere, especially as far as Tony Todd. I think one time when I did a blog post about this movie, I don't know, about 10 years ago. I mentioned it, I think it was on Twitter. Tony Todd reposted it. It was so cool. So I know that this movie, for fans of him, people who have never seen it, got to check this out. So this guy goes all the way up to the top of the building. Long story short, he gets trapped in the building. He messes with the wrong people, says the wrong thing, and this gang is after him. They are out to destroy this little twerp. And he is a chicken shit himself, but you know what? Luckily, above on the top floor is, you guessed it, Ray Parker Jr., a telephone repairman who's there to help this insurance guy get from the top of the building all the way down to the bottom. So it sort of plays out a bit like that movie, The Raid. I mean, The Raid's a great movie. This movie is just full of that amazing 80s style and presence, and the music. It's got a great sort of hip-hop soundtrack going on. Tons of action sequences. I mean, I'm actually quite surprised that Ray Parker Jr. didn't star in more films. As far as I know of, this is the only movie that I'm aware of Ray Parker Jr. actually getting a starring role as a pretty fucking legitimate action star in this one. So he goes head-to-head against the vampires. The only thing that could have made this movie better, and this is not a spoiler, when I heard that this movie had this gang, the vampires, in it with Tony Todd, and they kept kind of talking about, you know, getting this guy before, you know, the sun rises, I thought, whoa, if this shifts and Tony Todd's a fucking vampire in this is going to be one of the greatest movies that I've ever seen. Unfortunately, that never happens. There's no supernatural aspect to it. And looking back now, it really didn't need any of that anyway. It's totally amazing the way it is. Another thing that I really love about Enemy Territory is that it sort of features that trope of, you know, the neighborhood having to unite to fend off an evil street gang. If you've ever seen Roberta Findlay's movie Tenement, that's another amazing movie that would be a perfect double feature with Enemy Territory. So if you like that movie, you sort of know the genre that I'm describing here with this one. It features a bunch of people who live in the building that, out of the kindness of their hearts, decide that they are going to help Ray Parker Jr., who gets himself into deep shit here just by even helping Gary Frank, the insurance guy, at all. Suddenly he makes himself a major target of this street gang. He's probably now in danger for the rest of his life. He needs help from the tenants of this building. And some of them, like an old woman and her daughter, help them in very unique ways. And like I mentioned before, Jan Michael Vincent stars in this. He's a disabled war veteran. He has got this apartment. I don't want to give too much away, but his apartment is, he's almost like this weird conspiracy theorist, you know, NRA sort of gun nut, and he doesn't like the vampires either. And at one point, he steps up to the plate. He's in a wheelchair. He's got tons of weapons at his disposal, and the inside of his apartment is unreal. It looks like something that he must have been fortifying for a decade or something. What I really love about this is the difference in the two lead characters. They've got great chemistry, but they start off being completely different because they come from two different realities of life. Gary Frank's character, who's sort of a privileged, you know, white guy, and Ray Parker Jr., who lives in sort of a dangerous neighborhood and has to deal with sort of the struggle of this every day of his life. But the great thing about it is they have really good chemistry. Gary Frank's character literally has to become a hero. So he goes from zero to hero, and he's got to do it very quickly because Ray Parker Jr. cannot handle this all on his own. They get a little help from the tenants, but really at the end of the day, these two guys have to work together to get out of this extremely dangerous predicament. And we've got Tony Todd, of course, never phoning it in. Here he's a great villain, and that's exactly what a movie like this really needs, is an amazing villain. You've got Tony Todd commanding the vampires, having them search every nook and cranny of the building. And there's great sequences. At one point, they have to exit a building, I don't know how many stories up, but they've got to descend from the outside of the building to get from point A to point B. Things come to a head. It's a really great finale. It's so cool to see all of these tenants working together. Enemy Territory is an amazing 80s movie with a Ghostbusters connection. with Ray Parker Jr., and he should have gotten more roles. Another thing that I noticed just right now is that it has Ernest Dickerson is the director of photography, which is sort of interesting. And he did movies like, he directed Demon Knight, which is an absolute horror classic. I would say Demon Knight may be the best horror movie of the 90s. He also did Bones, which is an awesome movie with Snoop Dogg. Love that one. And another one that I plan on covering here as well, Surviving the Game with Ice-T, which is an absolute fucking banger. Probably one of the best wilderness survival action movies, and featuring Gary Busey in a completely, probably his most unhinged role. Another fun thing about this is the music. There's a cool track in here that's showcased, Dealing with Life by the Boogie Boys. I can't suggest this movie enough as probably maybe the number one contender on my list of movies that need fancy restoration, Blu-ray, whatever, 4K you want to give it. This movie is going to resonate with people. I believe you can find a copy of Enemy Territory on VHS on eBay. It'll probably run you around $30 to $40. So it's kind of a pricey tape, but well worth the money spent. Actually, this one was found at the bins. A friend of mine was nice enough to give it to me. I had it before on VHS. I sold it at the store here. I always regretted it. Enemy Territory from 1987. Who you gonna call? Ray Parker Jr., of course.
Begins from the troubles within. You gotta grow before you walk, lose before you win. Take step by step, stride by stride. 'Cause if you don't hold your head, you won't get by.